Welcome. Helen and I this week are diving into the beauty of masculine and feminine energy and how we can channel this in our life, picking and choosing like a beautiful recipe in our work relationships and our personal relationships, and understanding the traits, understanding the way the behaviors show up, and then also choosing how that we can channel those energies in different situations. Welcome, Helen. It's good to see you again.
Hi, likewise.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Yeah, great. Thank you. It's been a busy week. Life is one day at a time right now, which is kind of nice to be sort of present in how it shows up and what I need on a personal basis. What about you?
It's been great. Just kind of the flow as you were doing the intro. For me, what came up is that it's all about the flow and transition between the masculine and the feminine.
Yes.
We might not necessarily be conscious about it, however, it does happen, and we generally tend to have a certain way or set point that we behave in certain situations. And know that that can change. And if you spend a little bit of time reflecting on it, then you can easily navigate and transition between situations.
Beautiful. I think that fluidity is very important, and we definitely get into in this chat a lot of sort of situations where it was this or it was this. But I think it's interesting really looking at the fluidity of how in each moment you can sort of allow a little bit of each instead of having to be like this and that permission to flow between both, and that permission to also tune in and channel which one makes sense. You might be sort of playing with both.
Mm.
Yeah, amazing. All right, well, let's head over to the interview, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Helen and Tony's Dive Into Your Mind. We are jumping in today with a concept and the story and all the pieces around masculine and feminine energy. And I'm super excited to talk to Helen today. I love getting into this stuff, and we have a lot of good kind of experience, to be honest, between the two of us, that we have really taken our time to pick apart this journey of finding our feminine energy and owning our masculine energy, understanding when to use it, when not to use it, and it's going to be great. So let's take a little minute while Helen comes in to join us to take a breath as we welcome in our beautiful friend, Helen,
Hello, how are you?
as if it was magic. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Let me just sort out my sound. I think that might be better.
Yes, I think actually that was me, if we're honest. Just saying.
Okay.
I can go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I just thought I would like own up to that shit. That's a good intro into masculine energy, feminine energy, and how to own it, how to channel it, how to use it, how to understand when to use it at the right time, better times without labeling
Mhm.
it, societal pressures. So masculine and feminine energy is what we're going to touch on today. So I'm super excited to be here with you. So for some of you that know, Helen has embarked on an incredible sort of journey of studying and learning, and we have known each other for something like 20 years from living in London together. And both of us have been sort of devouring the concept of spirituality and consciousness and study and learning and expansion on so many different ways. And I love that we both come at things from a very different angle, but we kind of meet in the middle, and we have very frank and very real conversations. You know, often we have to kind of almost temper ourselves, maybe even as we talk about masculine and feminine energy, of not trying to solve each other, but to offer advice and sort of real talk back and forth. Whenever we speak, sometimes we kind of jump straight in and we forget to be softer around the edges, which I think is important in life, to be, you know, feminine and soft. Whether you're actually a male or a female, it doesn't matter. It's really about tuning in and channeling those powers of what that can bring about. So to get us started, why don't you talk a little bit about our favorite start, kicking off. Tell us a little about like the logical side of things, the more sort of background maybe to sort of how masculine and feminine can show up.
So in terms of like in all the different situations that we have in life and around various people, we might have a natural set point of masculine and feminine. And let's just say, you know, I should say masculine is right because it is the right side of the body, and then feminine is left. So as I'm looking at the right camera to figure this out. So somewhere along the line, you have like a natural set point for where you operate. And depending on who you're with, you'll probably find if you're with a friend who's like, who would typically classify as really girly, like wearing pink dresses, always getting her nails done, squealing, not able to, you know, screw like something together, or
you were going to go a different direction then. I was like, the X-rated version at 9:30 on a Friday morning. We're going to get straight into screwing. I was like, yeah.
I'm going to say deflate a tire, like or even
generalizations, but I see where you're going. Yeah.
Or well, you know, if we do go back to the screwing piece, are you more passive in initiating sex than being aggressive and assertive in initiating it? So there are many traits with the masculine which you would associate with, like logical, decision making, assertive, take action,
directness,
directness, like you know, like leader type instincts. Whereas when you go to the feminine, there's more you know, caring, like passive, nurturing, considerate of others, more communicative, expressive of feelings and emotions. So, and there are reasons why.
Did you put creativity in there?
Yeah, so definitely there's like, you know, I guess you've got the left brain and the right brain, and the right brain. Oh, don't put me on the spot. It's been a long day, but I think is left brain's creative, right brain's logic, because it goes the other way, right? So there's definitely, you know, I guess logical is always associated with men, but then when you get the creativity in musicians, you know, that all comes from a place of like, I'd say musicians are probably a little bit better in expressing their emotions than, you know, your typical alpha male in the business world. I mean, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and even I think maybe we pin that in the board, because that's almost like that's sometimes feels like a channeling of energy. But, you know, I think that we know as many artists have not been able to express their emotions, maybe in a personal context, which has brought them great pain and suffering, but they are able to channel their energy into, you know, some sort of physical thing or music or writing or whatever. So we can maybe put that on the pin board for later.
The pin board. Yeah, you're right. It's the channeling of energy.
Maybe, I mean, there's no wrong or right in any of this thing. That's what I think I love about these conversations, that too, we're just bouncing around sort of concepts and ideas, and then working out or looking at how we apply it within our own self, and certainly some examples. And I think as I was listening to all of those kind of lists of what is on each side, there's also this element of, you know, societally, of what we should display or be or label as being masculine, feminine energy, and then how that then shows up in our relationships and our work and our kind of just how we move in the world. I think it's kind of interesting to look at it from that perspective.
I have just lost you.
You have lost the plot.
Okay. No, I'm back.
And that was hilarious for me. I'm literally laughing my head off over here. Okay, all right, you're back. So we're talking about masculine and feminine energy today and how it shows up in our work. Let's start with work. I think that's a good place. How for you, we've both
Mm.
had very high performance roles, high performance jobs, and we've always been in a sort of strong world where we've needed to take a leadership role, and we've needed to,
Mm.
you've run companies from a CFO level, senior fire and things like that.
Yeah.
So how's it showed up for you in a masculine energy around the work stuff?
There's a way to communicate with people above you,
Mm-hmm.
and
Interesting.
that is, yeah, that's logical and in order of priority, um, with business benefits and business risks.
Okay.
So when you think about everything that I've just said, it's all very logical, it's very thought out.
Mm-hmm.
In different parts of the world, decisions are made differently based on, the hierarchies and the politics that are in place in each organization.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find that, particularly in multicultural companies, there might be a predominant nationality,
Okay.
and that the politics of that nationality will kind of run the dynamics of the interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So, but fundamentally, any profitable business, the one that survives and thrives, is always going to make the decisions based on facts. And for you to be able to be very like fact-based, or to even talk about the biggest opportunities and mitigate the risks, of any organization, you're going to have to be able to speak in a logical manner and quantify, or at least put in like a diagram or do a pictorial version of how that's going to impact the business. And you'll find the more creative types are generally in PR and marketing. And of course, with my background in like merchandising, like you'll find that a lot of people on the buying side are also quite creative in terms of the way they put things together, like anything to do with visual merchandising events, which is, your world, like getting together creative concepts. So advertising, that's all kind of that creative space, non-judgmental, not logical. You're looking for different options and bouncing ideas. Whereas I would say anything more financially direction based would be that very, very logical kind of piece. So it depends on the industry. But, as you make it up the chain, like feelings very rarely have a role in the workplace. I've not found that. I think as a female, maybe, once or twice, you might just kind of be overwhelmed and frustrated, and you may express your emotions, but you could only do that once or twice before people don't think you can handle yourself, or you can handle that role. So from from an expressing emotions point of view, you're allowed that once or twice, and then you've really got to work on yourself to kind of go, why is this impact? Why am I so frustrated by this? And what do I do when I get frustrated? Do I lash out? Do I cry? Do I withdraw? What do I do?
Which is so fascinating, because as I listen to you, like my mind's pinging. First of all, that's a fascinatingly masculine reaction to emotions, to work out why I'm doing them. How do I shut them down? How do I not do this? I can't do this because otherwise I'll be judged, or I'll be, reprimanded, or whatever the words are, which are loose. And so it's really interesting just looking at this kind of conversation of, whilst I think there are, there's a spectrum of all of these emotions and things like that, or all of these behaviors, from assertiveness and, nurturing, can be on both sides. But I think it's interesting that we, label and put it into one bucket, that, you have to be this way to get things done, or you have to be this way to create things. And I certainly know myself, I've tried to, actually not even tried, like I know I've straddled those worlds, because I've seen the results based on, by being expressive and by being nurturing and by being engaging, but also being clear, and also being honest, and also being also being direct, that you engage people in a way because you're kind of seeing them for who they are, cutting through maybe some of the labels and things like that, which is where maybe I've been, I don't know if I want to say experimental, but that's always how I've sort of operated in my life. Therefore, coming to a place that I can sort of see the human for what they are and what the situation needs, which is kind of where that energy molding kind of comes in. And then, you know, find a way to tap into either the masculine or the feminine energies on either side to help the situation, you know, get into flow or to have a better result or whatever the answers are, which is really, you know, kind of fascinating. So it's interesting that, because I think even to apply, and I'm sure you have some examples of some situations where, you know, something came to an impasse or something like that. But, you know, when we kind of then apply the masculine energy, you then almost get a knock-on effect, masculine energy result, which doesn't necessarily work on both sides.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. I think particularly like, you know, masculine, you know, people have expectations of how each gender would respond in a certain situation. And if you deviate from somebody's expectation, then, you know, there's always going to be a situation where you have to get to know each other and how each other's going to respond. And if you're looking to get a result before nurturing the relationship, then that's going to impact you. I think you'll get a lot further by nurturing relationships and then and you'll get the result that way, as opposed to kind of going, well, you know, we need to make some tough decisions right now. Here's what it is. You're always going to get like a better result when you nurture the relationship first.
Yeah, but it's amazing. I mean, you're talking about, I think, you know, imagine we're in a work context or in a creative context, and you have the time and space maybe to be clocking everyone and to working out how to sort of like nurture that relationship. But you might be in something that's a very one-on-one quick, or, you know, a group interaction in a very quick context, that sort of this ability to maybe even understand within yourself how your masculine and feminine behaviors manifest, you know, which, you know, could be another whole subject of like how we, you know, we're all doing the work to understand ourselves. I mean, I think every conversation that we have, and I'm kind of bringing in back subjects here for the sake of kind of continuity and expansion, but, you know, everything is about understanding yourself. If we can understand ourselves, then we can work out how then we interact with other people. And I think that on the masculine and feminine energy side, so then I can look at, okay, how in certain situations, you know, if I'm trying to be the leader or the boss, how do I see my masculine energy show up? And then knowing that I can sort of then work out how to wield that in the moment, whether that's an extended situation or whether that's just a couple of minutes. And then how do I know my feminine? So being able to sort of like chameleon and tap into different energies is really quite fascinating.
Yeah. And I think there are some people that can get away with just, you know, hovering around, you know, maybe in masculine for their entire career. And I think it depends on what you get rewarded for. So if you're getting rewarded and promoted for particular behavior, then you kind of go, oh, okay, to continue to get rewarded and promoted, I'm going to have to continue this behavior. And then that might change as, you know, as the problems or the challenges that you face. So let's just say, you know, managing, you know, a team of men versus managing a team of women are two very, very different, two very, very different things. So it comes down to what circumstances you're in and what you've been rewarded for, I think, in the work context, but also what have you been rewarded for when you were growing up? What have you been rewarded for when you were like with your father or around other men? What have you been rewarded for when you were in relationships? And you'll find that, you know, so let's just say you're very direct at work and you're driving aggressively home and you're still in that direct mode and you've not stopped and transitioned into, oh, I'm a human being. I don't need to be as direct. Like I can kind of chill out now a little bit. that's going to impact your relationship. And if you show up as, you know, more masculine, then the man's going to depending on the person, but the other person's going to show up more feminine because you don't give them the space to operate that way. And men, out of respect, will not challenge you. Like, I think there's something to also, you know, another interesting thing is also feminism. Like, how has that impacted, you know, has that emasculated men, or has it actually enhanced the relationships that we have with them?
Side note, I love this. I literally have my brains like do, 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 do. I saw this incredible documentary about Dolly Parton. If anyone has a chance to see it, it is amazing. Just listening about her life story and just how incredible she was. But it was Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlinson, that obviously did 9 to 5 with her years ago, spoke about kind of watching Dolly grow up over the years. And Jane Fonda spoke about feminism being a woman that understands her wholeness, you know, a woman that is in embodiment of being a whole woman. And I thought that was really interesting. I've only ever understood feminism to sort of be about, like, maybe this is not the right term, but like the ball busting side of feminism and the sort of activist side of things like that. But it was kind of interesting to look at it. Yeah, I think jumping into some personal examples, I certainly can really see and remember when I was often in my work context in a very masculine energy, where I would sort of come in and think I needed to be in charge and I needed to be strong and direct and sort of and it definitely manifested in a bossy way and in a way where I was definitely, let's just say, not paying attention to people, what they needed. It was very much sort of like results orientated with no sort of understanding of how they what they may be working through as they went through. And it felt like something I had to do. I think until I really understood myself, I didn't really know there was choices, and I didn't also see how there was a spectrum of how I could tap into that at certain points, and how I could kind of tap in actually, and use the feminine energy to be able to kind of get better results or different results. And very interesting that you said that, as you go home, then you're sort of like, even sometimes I would think about myself walking home on the subway from New York. You'd be like, fast, 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 I've got to get home. You're like, where are you going? Why do I need to walk so fast? So that sort of energy would go through, and then you would get into the home life and then feel again that you were sort of trying to be the boss around the house. And whilst I don't sort of subscribe to sort of the 1950s wife and husband, male female relationships, but I think there's a beauty in softening into the feminine energy to allow the receiving of a man to be a man. And I think, I've certainly seen how multiple relationships, which is nice to know that I've kind of evolved from that, but multiple relationships where I saw the man, I want to use my words.
So can I just, so men like to give and they like to protect. And if you're the one that's always giving, and if you're not giving them space, if you just don't give them space to do something. So I think women are just like on the ball now. Yeah. Like, whereas if you just gave a guy some space, like they might just kind of, get there, like, but not on your time. And there's this
nothing's on our time.
But there's this thing about what you said at work is that, you're very outcome driven. So therefore it was important for you to be effective with the time that you had, because you had to deliver results on time.
Yes.
And I would ask you, were you really aware of what your emotions were, during that phase of your career? Yeah.
No. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I think when I first started to become awake, or was awakening, and I would say this is 2011 to 2013, 14, was really around my work, my work concepts. And no, I think my emotions were so frozen, were so sort of pushed down. I just come out of a 7-year breakup. So I was I was and had started a new job. So I was so focused on being the boss and being a good boss and pushing down the feelings of that relationship because I couldn't allow myself any time to sort of feel it, is probably the highest level comment, because I was just so focused on being good in the job that I didn't have any space for feeling the emotions. And in the meantime, to be honest, I was like, that was the kind of cauldron of
Yeah.
Feelings and energies that then sort of spat itself out 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
6 years later,
Yeah.
because I wasn't in a place. And I think as we go through our awakening, I don't think we could look at it from like, God doesn't send us more than we can handle in one go. And I also feel like I needed to work
Unless
out.
he's trying to break you. Unless he's trying to break you.
True, but even that is not more
to
than
get
you
you
can
on your
handle.
path. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And I think, to that point, I think that I wasn't sent my personal shit to deal with until later, because I needed to sort of almost, it's beautiful to look back, like kind of seed my future in the work context, so that I would have that to carry me through. And I think, as we also tie in the element of like, we often identify ourselves with our jobs, and, there was definitely an extraction process for me that I am nothing without this job, and I don't have any value, or I don't have any worth, and very much like it was all wrapped up in that, which is very masculine as well. And as I softened into that, my job and my world and my work life got more rich and more fulfilling. And then also it then transitioned me into the personal life. I feel like someone told me at one point, I think it might have even been Marianne Williamson. I love her so much. I did a 5-week relationships course. If anyone ever finds it on the internet or out there, it is truly, 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 truly magical. And she talked about it. If there is no role for them to play, then they really, there will be no role for them to play. And I think about that for me, and I've I've been very good at taking up all the roles, because I was so scared that if I didn't, they would leave, or if I didn't, nothing would get done. I mean, you can put in on a many different, kind of comments there. And I think that is what, led me to actually really be able to see that, like, and I see that in my business too. I think sometimes when, you've got to make a role for people so that they can fill it. And part of that is having the trust in yourself, the trust in them, the trust in the higher power. I mean, it's very layered,
And
but
giving
simple
them
at the same time.
and giving them the time as well.
Yeah.
There was something that you said earlier on about when you were in your role and you were looking to perform. I just wanted to ask you, when you were looking to perform, were you looking at everything that you did well, or were you looking at the errors that you made?
I would say when I was in that peak work time, 2011 to 2013, all I could see was lack of what I wasn't doing. I wasn't able to affect in the way I wanted. I was dealing with a group of workers and bosses that were sort of working through their own stuff. And I'd had no concept of actually who I was, and no concept of my own abilities, and no trust in myself either. It was absolutely riddled with fear and riddled with reactionary work processes that were trying to sort of like make things happen, force it to happen, get people to believe that I was great. And there was no space for sort of like even understanding what I was actually good at and what I brought to the table, which, I think in hindsight was a lot, but I didn't see that and didn't have the courage to give that any value, because I was always actually also looking for outside validation of like, what do they think of me? And, I need to be better in these meetings, or I need to be more organized, or, more in charge, or more something. It was very much always from the lack. Yes. Which it definitely maps over to the relationships too, because again, I took up all the roles for the man in the relationship because, I was looking at what what, you know, the lack of things, of what wasn't there. Therefore I had to fill that role in order to feel
Right.
comfortable. You know, it was like
Okay.
I was grabbing onto anything I could. I mean, there's no question I was,
Yeah.
you know, clutching at straws.
Okay.
And what about you?
Um,
Tell us about your work situation when you were kind of in that high performing role. How did you see the masculine and feminine energy? And were you aware of that then to be able to tap into?
I always just thought that I was being efficient. Like that would have been
Okay.
like the one thing. I just wanted to be efficient and effective because I always had
Yes.
things to do.
Yes.
What people would tell me later on as I was moving to another organization or moving countries is that,
Hmm.
gee, you were like quite the ball breaker. And I was like, what? But I'm so nice. What do you mean? And then they were like, yeah, we wish we'd gotten to know you a bit more, but we couldn't even get to know you because you were so busy all the
Mm.
time. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay.
Mm.
And that's been like consistent
Yeah.
feedback. But I don't know,
Yeah.
there's something about walking through the office doors, maybe when I work for somebody else, where I'm like, okay, that's it. It's on, power through, especially when you know how much you have to do and how
Yes.
much you have to deliver. And I guess
Yeah.
if you don't deliver on time consistently, then you're not seen to be doing it. So then you either do a case to get the resources that you need. But if you build a story in your head saying that I'm not going to get the resources, then it activates other type of um, behavioral patterns, which might not be
Mm.
constructive.
Mm. I
Um,
can see
but
that.
I
Like
guess
I'm the boss and I got to do everything, and other people don't do it right, and I'm never
yeah,
going to get help. So I'm just going to stay here. And I mean, I
yeah,
think there were times when, you know, I think I feel very strongly about the concept of corporate fear and corporate, you know, environments that aren't supportive to the human and aren't supportive to the collective, of like, how do we embrace and nurture and support people and actually see everybody for who they are. And I think that comes from,
yeah,
you know, the corporate structure, as well as, you know, the societal pressure of corporations and how they should be, and also from the leadership and different things like that. And you know, there was just definitely this concept that no matter what you did, it was never enough. You know, I remember I used to try and stay every day to get my inbox to empty so I could start fresh the next day. And I mean, at some point I just couldn't
mm,
stay there long enough. It was like, it didn't matter how many emails I did,
mm,
you know, it was always kind of coming in. And I think it's what I've definitely learned tuning into the feminine energy is like, I can actually, if anything, the more I step away, or the more I trust my intuition of like giving things a break, whether
mm,
it's a 5 minute walk around the block, which sometimes,
yeah,
you know, is scary. Like I don't think I had a lunch break for years because I was too scared to
yeah,
leave, because I thought I'd get in trouble or I wasn't doing
yeah,
enough. You know, I think that tuning into that feminine energy as part of your work can actually like induce so much more flow. And if we're going to get into like the universe, like
yeah,
it's almost like then, you know, your fingers start typing and things get easier and people
yeah,
respond. You know, the kind of synchronicities of life start
yeah,
to work in a way, whereas if you're sort of just at it forcing all day, it seems to sort
yeah,
of you know, make it even harder.
yeah. There is a work philosophy around flow,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all based on high performance athletes and what happens to high performance athletes when they get into the
Mm.
flow and the zone.
Yes.
And it's a very hard pronouncing name, who's pioneered this. I think it's like 20 years old. I think he's been
Okay.
studying it for 20 years. But when you say, I got away from my desk, went for a walk around the block so that I could
Mm-hmm.
calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it comes back to, prefrontal cortex, which is where all our critical thinking happens.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when you're going around the block and you're relaxing, you're kind of, using the whole brachia brain,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do work. And this is what you describe as flow. So the
Mm-hmm.
minute
Mm-hmm.
that you just relax that prefrontal cortex, is that masculine? Is it feminine? I just think it's called being human. I think sometimes we just forget to be human beings. And when
Mm-hmm.
you are a human being, you can actually just kind of like drop down and relax into that.
Mm.
But I think, if you're tense and in for the fight and you need to deliver and you're like, you know, do this, like it's never going to happen.
Yes. Yeah, I guess there's a part of me that wants to offer that it's feminine, laced with feminine energy. And I say that around like the intuition side of things. You know, I think there's a, you know, if we go back to caveman times, you know, the caveman was like, burr, 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 and the woman was like, you know, let's take a break. Let's look at the sun. Or I don't know, maybe I'm over exaggerating, but I think there's something about it. It's, and maybe the way I say it feels like it's about intuition is because it's so intuitively programmed for us to go the other direction. And that's kind of what is giving me the sort of, you know, vibe of it being masculine versus feminine, because we are just tuned to not do that. We're not trained, we're not told, we're not even supported to, you know, to rest or to take a breath or to give something an opportunity to mull over or to,
right. So,
you know,
self-care and nurture. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that sort of like that function becomes something that is so ingrained that, you know, the only way, it's like no pain, no gain. The only way to get stuff done is, you know, head down, bum up, work hard, hustle, hustle, hustle. And I think, you know, that has probably been one of the, like, I mean, I've had a lot of amazing moments as part of this awakening and this journey of kind of learning who I am and stepping into masculine and feminine energy and being able to play with emotional intelligence and emotional mastery and understanding all this. But I think that one of the most beautiful gifts that I have given myself is this sort of permission to step away, to take a break, to look at things differently. And that could look like from getting something to eat, to going for a walk, to laying in the sun, to reading a book, to
But you're being very conscious when you do that. It's like the conscious decision to do it and the conscious enjoying of every single moment of doing it. Because you could go, well, okay, I'm going to go take a coffee and take a break, but you're still like uptight, tense, you know, shoving your food in your mouth. Like I think you're consciously choosing to relax into every single moment of the activity that you choose to do.
Yeah, definitely. And at the same time, it's still a, you know, it is a journey as part of that. I mean, I think I watch myself sometimes like, oh, okay, I'm going to walk to the shop, so I'm going to listen to a podcast on the way. You know, like there's a lot of double dipping that I go using my time of like, you know, or I'm going to, you know, eat my lunch, so I'll catch up on this or something. So, you know, I think I believe in a very conscious state where I'm literally looking at everything I'm doing to see, you know, how it makes me feel. And then tuning in, like, does this bring me joy? Does this not bring me joy? And that's kind of really almost like the parameters that I've set. And that's taken, you know, taking like years to extract myself from this. You know, I think when I first started the business, 2014, when I left sort of working for someone, there was days when I would wake up in the sweats and literally like making myself ill because I was so scared that if I didn't sit at my desk at 9 o'clock, that people would think I was lazy, never give me work, wouldn't hire me, were wondering where the fuck I was. You know, what was I doing? Meanwhile, I might have been up till 3, 4 in the morning working on something because I'm more of a night owl. So there was such a process of extraction of how I thought things should be, which I think, you know, maybe that's masculine kind of masculine energy driven, you know, like these are the rules and this is how it has to be, you have to follow this, and if you don't, you're a rule breaker or something. You know, there's probably a lot of things mixed in there.
Patriarchal. Patriarchal. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, without it being, you know, specifically masculine energy concept. Yeah. And so that was a huge part of rewiring my own brain so that I could give myself the permission to be in flow, you know, to trust that if I take inspiration when it comes and also honor when it hasn't come, which I guess is the sort of, you know, again, the masculine energy polarity of forcing something, you know, I think when you have a deadline and things like that, you have to get things done. But at some point, you know, if you're sitting there literally and you're not writing anything and it's jammed, then, you know, like you may as well just get up and have a walk around the block. And then all of a sudden I'm confident it's going to come
do
back
something.
in. Yeah.
to break the state that you're in, because whatever you're doing is not working, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
why would you continue to do what's not working? Like it
But
makes
I
sense
mean,
to
that's the
continue to
definition of
try something different.
insanity. Yeah.
Mm.
But I mean, I spent a hell of a lot of years doing that. I mean, not only in
Yeah,
relationships, doing the same thing, wondering why I wasn't getting a
yeah,
different result. And at the same time in a
yeah,
work thing, just sitting there thinking, well, this is what
yeah,
you have to do.
yeah. I think the whole thing with relationships is that we're not actually taught how to express our needs.
Mm.
Like we're not
Yeah.
taught how to express our needs or our emotions. So when you walk through the door, your need might be for your partner to acknowledge you straight away. And if your partner's engaged with another activity, like on the phone, TV, with kids or playing a game, and you don't get that acknowledgement, that could be a very big thing for you in terms of just triggering like a downward spiral of I'm not loved. Like the story around your mind is always going to make a story. You just need to be aware of what stories your mind is making and make them more constructive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was listening to some astrology stuff today, and we're going into an eclipse on Monday in Sagittarius, new moon. And there's also sort of this
Okay.
big conjunction where Saturn and Pluto, which are being the big sort of planets like the taskmaster and sort of the expanders. And they've been really sort of like working a lot of the kind of working us to look at our stories and to basically, this is the chance to rewrite, like, are we going to continue to living the story that we've always had, or are we going to take the courage to rewrite it? Because really, to be honest, everything, like you say, that's in your head is something that you've made up, and then you've allowed it to keep going, versus being like, that's not the truth, or that's not how I want it to be. And I think it's a really interesting point for people to really look at the stories. Like, we could tie in the masculine and feminine energy. What do you feel like as a woman you need to do, and what do you feel like as a man you need to do? What do you feel like in your relationship, whether you're male or female, do you need to do?
Yeah. And I would add to that, like, what's your version of femininity? Because I think we get projected so many ideas of what being feminine is. And some of us may have grown up with the overly sexualized version of what being feminine is, and
right.
others is like, be passive, or be girly, or be dominant and contribute equally in the relationship. So everybody has a different version of what femininity is, and masculinity. So what is the most so define it for yourself, and what is the most empowering and natural thing that kind of serves you. And just know that you move up and down the scale depending upon the situation that you're in. And if you show up incredibly masculine in a relationship, you will get more of a passive partner being attracted to you. So if that's not what you want, then you're going to have to change.
Yeah.
And then
I'm laughing at my own. Yeah.
So it's just really understanding that. And it's like, okay, so here's the role that I can play. Do I want to play it all the time? If you don't want to play it all the time, then look at changing how you show up. And that can be I've had a lot of people try and micromanage me into relationships unsuccessfully. But they all talk about being girly. But I think there's a part of people where they're always on guard, just because of it. It's habit, right? It's just habit.
Yeah.
It's not it's not nature. It's just nurture.
Yeah.
But I just think if you can define what it means to you, if you can be true about where you're really at in each situation, then you can choose to change and choose to take action.
And just noticing. I mean, I think everything we talk about in all of these conversations and the work that we do personally and professionally, it's really about awareness and noticing. And I think that we laugh at times. Like I don't remember too much the version that I was years ago. Like I know how different I am. And I
Yeah.
bet, sometimes I think, did I just become like aware overnight or how, but it's been a journey, it's been a process. And I think,
Yeah.
every day we have noticed more and more things. And I have this,
Mm.
voracious appetite to learn about myself and to understand how I am in every moment so that I can be
Mm-hmm.
of like higher service to myself, and
Mm-hmm.
as I've then, as I mentioned in the beginning, kind of unpicked all the little pieces. I looked at myself like, how am I in relationships? How am I in friendships? How do I show up
Mm.
in these ways? So as I go through every day, I ask myself, how am I showing up in these things? And that is how I've become more aware. I look at how I interact in a work context. Am I trying to sort of,
Mm.
if I'm there as the leader or if I'm there as one of the collective, like how am I trying to impose
Mm.
my ways? I really
Mm.
think that I find it fascinating and enjoyable almost, because taking out all the personal and not taking anything personally, if we go back to the four agreements, being able to
Mm.
sort of notice behaviors and not take it personally, and also see like why we do these things. Everything we've talked about, we often go back, that it comes back to something in our childhood
Yeah.
that has made us want to do that. And I think,
Yeah.
you know having a vision now, that I think that I felt like I needed to be the boss and in charge, and this sort of masculine energy, because I never really had
Yeah.
anyone like taking charge like that when I was a kid. So I was like, I'm just going to do it. And that's what
Yeah.
I did. My
Yeah.
mom said that the day my father left, I I got on my school uniform and got my bag and walked to the bus and got on the bus and didn't look back. And that's gangster at 5 years old, like, on one level. But I also know that, and I'm
Mm.
just feeling that for a minute, like that repressed a lot of shit,
Yeah.
because I went out and
Yeah.
got on with business instead of, feeling those
Right.
feelings or
It's-
expressing that. And, we've been
Yeah.
talking about that for years. And
Yeah.
it's only maybe in the last few years that my mum even shared that memory or that vision.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
my entire life has been based on that sort of energy of like, we don't have time to talk about that, and we don't have,
Yeah.
there's no value, so let's just get on with
Yeah.
things. And
There's
that's,
there's no value in speaking about it, so therefore just let
yes,
it go. And
yes,
you're like, well, hang on, we all process things differently. And if you want to
yes,
sweep it under the rug, and then your body is riddled with illness and disease because you've kept it
yes,
inside of you, as opposed to
yes,
expressing it and understanding it,
yes,
and understanding
yes,
how it's showed up and impacted your behavior throughout your entire life. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah. I've this week I've had quite a few people with cancer come into my life, and we've all
okay,
spoke like the consistent thing that's come up with cancer patients is, and just some documentaries I've been watching with the oncologists. They all talk about like the cancer patient having to really reassess the way that they interact with everybody in their life,
right,
and the people who survive after the treatment are the ones with the right mind frame, and the ones who actually change change the way that they show up to the people
mm,
around them, because they know that their existing life is not sustainable. So it's you can only really change yourself. You cannot change any situation.
yes, yes,
And the more you can understand about your birth, your nurture, yeah, the nature, yeah, the more you can understand about your nurture, then the more the
the more
easier you'll be
informed
able
you
to
about your
deconstruct
nature.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. And I want to just gently ping you there on language about the right mindset of those patients, because I think there's no wrong or right, but one that is more
Yeah.
bound in and I'm not even going to say positivity, because I think that's glossing
Yeah.
over something too. It's, more
Yeah.
bound in the energy that,
Resourceful.
intellectual,
Yeah.
and it's resourceful,
Yeah.
and it's looking at things from an angle of like, if our words are our future, then, and I'm
Yeah.
telling these stories to myself,
Mm.
then
Yeah.
I will tell myself a story that is nurturing and loving and caring, so that
Yeah.
that can then feed into my body and my health and my
Yeah.
recovery process. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
thinking, as I was having my own moment through that whole experience, thank you for
Yeah.
holding space while I did that.
That's okay.
I was thinking about, like, maybe it ties into the sort of masculine feminine energy too, but like just thinking about like what does that 5-year-old in you need at that moment? And I think about myself getting on that school bus, what I probably needed
Right.
was like, a hug and a kiss, and it was like everything's going to be okay, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter, or some sort of
Yeah.
conversation. And I think that as we go through our lives and we kind of get into these
Yeah.
situations, in every way, work and play, how do we look at
Yeah.
ourselves through the mindset of our younger self, and to be able to ask, like, how would we, hold space in a masculine and feminine energy way of, like, is
Mm.
it sort of like a buck up, get on with things,
Yeah.
or is it, a kind of like, I'm here and I can nurture you and give you sort of something, it's kind of interesting as we,
Yeah.
apply the same principle to the journey with our younger selves.
Yeah. I would even offer to you that the fact that as a 5-year-old you just made the decision to get your bag and get on that bus, that there were events prior to that where you'd learnt that you just had to get up and get on.
Right.
And that might have been like a major event that your mother remembers, but I'd say that
Yes. Yes.
prior to
Yeah.
that, that habit would have happened.
Yes.
Um, our feelings are our best way of knowing, like they're real and they're our best way of knowing uh, what we're processing at the moment. And if you continue to suppress them, they will come out at the wrong time in
Yeah.
the most spectacular ways.
Oh, I have some of those stories too. Maybe we should put them on the board for next time. I have a couple of stories of like, what the hell was I thinking? But yeah.
Yeah. So it really is important to, nurture yourself in a holistic manner, which is to, feel the feeling until it no longer needs to be felt.
Yeah.
But just feel the feeling without the story.
Mm-hmm.
Because with the story, let's just say you've got like an angry story or a sad story, like you may have the emotion, and the emotion could be, if you scanned your body, it could be sitting somewhere in your body, like maybe in the pit of your stomach or in your heart.
Right.
Um, but if you start saying, I'm sad because, or I'm angry because, then you just start to find another story why you're angry, another story why you're sad. Whereas if you let go of this, yeah, if you let go of the stories and you just feel that emotion, and you just truly cry or truly express the anger, which is just pure anger, it's not
Mm-hmm.
anger at someone, it's just anger. That's, that means that that emotion is more fully expressed and you can just
Mm-hmm.
move on without it being bottled up and exploding in a spectacular way later on.
Yeah, I think it
Right, you
clears
got to
it
laugh at it,
clears
right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah,
laughing now at all the dumb shit. I mean, I'm not going to say dumb, that's judgment. Like, just
yeah,
the stuff where I did not have the capacity to deal with my emotions and what I was feeling, and even just
yeah,
seeing how that affected me of that younger story. Like, it's not surprising to
yeah,
me that as a teenager, and maybe this is a good place to say it. There was a moment where I dated a guy, well, dated a guy, and we were sort of together, and then he went away and he came back and he was sort of like, what are you doing here? We're not together anymore. And I actually rang up the place that he was sort of negotiating to go play a good international sport, a high level sport, and told them that he was using drugs and that they shouldn't hire him. And I've had a lot of like personal remorse over this experience, because
yeah,
I was just so ashamed that I would do something so outrageous. It was so out of character, but I was so hurt that
yeah,
he came back from this trip and was literally just like, there was no ask, would go away, you know
right,
and so I couldn't cope with that. Like, it was just like I had no choice. It was shut down. There was no discussion. There
yeah,
was no concept of how I felt, or no understanding
yeah,
of that I was, experiencing anything. And so it squeezed out in a really fucking ugly way, in a way that I
yeah,
was ashamed of for many years. And I feel very fortunate that we spoke about it at some point, this person and I apologized, and also, it didn't affect his future, but that was a pretty extreme and classic example of not dealing with things, and then how it kind of then
Yeah.
came out in a way that was,
Yeah.
not in not in good spirits, and
Yeah.
not one
I'm
of my
sure you weren't
proudest
the
moments.
first girlfriend. I'm sure you weren't the first girlfriend who's like, who's rung up there.
Well, I think it was funny. The people on the phone, I mean, it's not funny, but not funny at all. But like the people on the phone were like, "Are you in a relationship with him?" And I'm like, "No, my dad plays sport with him, and I just thought you should know." Also, I had a pretty good story. I actually, the I'm not saying any of this for any value to myself but I did actually, I think the saving grace for many years before I was outed for that story, which, I'm glad it all came out, because it was really something I like bred and watered myself for years over. But I actually said my real name when I spoke to them, instead of like making up a name. I said my real
Oh,
name. And
good.
I think that is what everyone was kind of like, she would never do that. Like, why would she say her real name? And for years, nobody thought I actually
Oh,
did it. And it was
okay.
only years later that someone, a friend of mine outed me, and and everyone found out it was me. And I was like, yeah, I was fucked up, man. There was no arguments there. I was not in a good place, and just I didn't know how to deal with being,
Yeah.
shut
But
down.
it's also the way in which it happens, and it comes back to, we're not taught we're not taught how to graciously and respectfully get into and out of relationships.
Yes, yes,
Like we're really not. They don't really teach you that at school.
no,
And the relationships that you have with people, even with friends, they're the most important things that they're one of the most important things in your life. Like you could have all the
yes,
money in the world, but if you're lonely,
yes,
even if you have people around you, like
yes,
what's the point of having all the money and the success? Like
yes,
Robin
without your
Williams, Amy
health.
Winehouse, like yeah,
Yeah,
Heath Ledger, like what's you know. So you just kind of go, wow, if we're really not taught how to be emotionally intelligent and just respectfully interact with people,
and I would
our
even roll it back another level behind that. Like, I think it's like we're not taught to love ourselves, or to have any
yeah,
understanding of our own self-worth and self-value. Because if I had that, I probably wouldn't have got into the relationship in the first place, and placed
right,
myself in a situation that, I'm not going to say what I did provided the opportunity for him to treat me not well, but it was certainly,
right,
if I'm looking now, that pattern was going for years and years and years. I had no
yeah,
worth and value, so I put myself in these relationships, and I'd get treated like this, then I'd be
yeah,
destroyed, and it would just start again. And that was the way I went. And you know but that one, I couldn't handle what happened, so I did something crazy. I've never done anything like that since, and I'm glad I learned my lesson of, like, you know I don't know if I learned my lessons of getting more self-worth and value. That came later, but I
yeah,
certainly learned my lessons
yeah,
of not reacting in those ways, or being at least a bit more decent. So, hey,
mm,
progress
yeah,
is amazing. Well, thank you
de-
so much.
definitely.
Yes. Thank you so much. I love these conversations. I love you. Thank you for holding space. Thank you for sharing your truths, and for everyone out there that is working through their own journey of learning about themselves. Just be gentle. It's hard, intense stuff.
Mm.
Be
It
gentle.
can be fun also.
Yes,
Like,
I mean,
like just try and make
thank you
it
for
fun.
lightening that up.
That's what I do. That's what I
Yeah.
do.
Actually, I really love that point, because I think, as I look at the work that I'm doing, and the same,
Mhm.
like, I actually think it's hard and intense, and we need to be gentle, but like, it's not that deep. Like, just, I
Yeah,
think sometimes when we put a lot of heavy pressure on something, it then ends up kind of even
yeah.
harder. So, yeah, thank you for lightening that up. That was amazing. Oh my God, that's a hard moment. Thank you for the love
But
hearts. Thank you for go, go, go. Tell more. Say it,
I know
everyone.
so we hope you got a lot out of this session.
Yes.
So just remember to define how you want to be in every situation, and then just
Yeah.
hold yourself to that. And,
Yes.
you know, if there are masculine traits that are going to serve you, then use them. And if there are
Yes.
feminine traits that are going to serve you, then use them. And if you are after a relationship, because that's what a lot of my clients want, then really think about like what you want in a relationship and who those two people are and how they both need to show up. And then see if that's really what you want, because sometimes it's really not what you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, so just be
Yeah,
mindful
that's
of that
beautiful.
also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awareness, 1 second at a time, just being real with yourself. Amazing. Thank you so
Cool.
much for all your beautiful
Thanks.
insight. Bye, everyone. Have a great week, and we
Bye.
love you.